Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more of the judicial branches. Information on the judicial branch. Um, it's been a while, but I told you I would get back to the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, before long, as I was also doing executive branch. So, today we shall be doing the cases the Chase P. Salmon Court dealt with. And it's not a lot of cases, um, but there's a few. The first we want to look at is probably Ex parte Milligan. Now, Ex parte Milligan was, where did I lost my place. Ex parte Milligan says that in an opinion written by Justice Davis, the court ruled that the trials by military tribunal are constitutional only when the civil courts are not functioning and there is no power left but the military. And the case arose from the 1864 military tribunal in Indiana that tried several Union dissenters. And yeah, so this was a case that dealt with soldiers in the Union dissenting, basically going AWOL, and that they tried to hold military tribunals, but in Ex parte Milligan, which was in 1866, it basically said we don't do military tribunals except when the civil courts are no longer functioning and all you have is military. It's a last resort, in other words, and so it wasn't constitutional for the military tribunal. Another case we want to look at is Mississippi v. Johnson, which was decided in 1867. Now, in the opinion, which was written by the Chief Justice Salmon Chase, the court rejected a Mississippi lawsuit that was seeking to force President Andrew Johnson to enforce Reconstruction laws. The court held that Johnson's decision to enforce such laws was discretionary. That's interesting. Let me see if I can find a little more information on that. The state of Mississippi attempted to sue Andrew Johnson for enforcing Reconstruction. And the court decided, based on a previous decision, Marbury versus Madison, that the president has two kinds of tasks: ministerial and discretionary. And discretionary tasks are one the president can choose to do or not to do, while ministerial is tasks that are required by his office. So, okay. Let's see. Another case we may want to look at. Let me see if there's any others mentioned here. Georgia Reese's. Okay. Another one we would want to look at, was it Mississippi v. Johnson that I said that was? Yeah. Another one we would want to look at is Cummings versus Missouri, which was after the Civil War. Individuals in specific professions were required to take an oath of loyalty to the Union by the state of Missouri and Congress. Several individuals challenged this requirement, and on January 14th, 1867, the court held that both the national and state laws were unconstitutional. Justice Stephen Johnson Field authored the court's majority opinion. So, Missouri and the U.S. Congress tried to say you needed to take oaths to the Union, so we no longer have these a civil war. And the court said that's not legal to force anybody to say I pledge allegiance. I only give to this country and this state. There is no more, thinking my own thoughts, essentially. But yeah, let's see. In 1868, sorry, I keep saying 1868, we have Crandall v. Nevada. In an opinion written by Justice Miller, the court struck down a Nevada statute that imposed a $1 tax on people leaving the state. The court held that the right to travel is a fundamental right that cannot be impeded by states. So basically, Nevada was trying to squeeze money out of people who left the area and say, if you're going to leave, we're going to get our money from you. And the court basically said, you can't do that. One of the next cases we want to look at is Georgia versus Stanton, which happened in 1868. See, I did it again. In an opinion written by Justice Nelson, the court refused to intervene in the enforcement of the Reconstruction Acts, holding that the case constituted a non-justiciable political question. Let's see if we can find a little bit more on Georgia v. Stanton. The state of Georgia sued U.S. Secretary of War and two of his generals in order to prevent enforcement of the Reconstruction Act. So this is, again, the Reconstruction Acts that happened after the Civil War. The case originated under the court's original jurisdiction, and on February the 10th, 1868, the court held that the questions presented were outside the bounds of judicial inquiry, and Justice Samuel Nelson delivered the majority opinion of the court. So, the questions the state of Georgia tried to infer and ask about didn't really hold any bearing, they said, on the reconstruction that uh, the Supreme Court could do anything with. Now, let's see. Next case we want to look at, Texas v. White, 1869. In an opinion written by Chief Justice Chase, the court held that the Constitution does not permit states to legally secede from the Union. The decision held that all acts of Confederate secession were legally null. So, saying the Constitution did not provide the right of states to say we wish to secede, and what the reasons we give were perfectly fine, the court said, no, you had no right under the Constitution to do that. And everything you tried to proclaim to perform secession is legally invalid. Now, let's see. The next case we want to look at is let's see. Hepburn versus Griswold, which was in 1870. Supreme Court case in which Salmon P. Chase, speaking for the court, declared certain parts of the Legal Tender Acts to be unconstitutional, specifically making U.S. notes legal tender was unconstitutional. Let's see, the lawsuit started with one Miss Hepburn, who attempted to pay a debt to Henry Griswold on a promissory note, which was made 5 days before the issuance of U.S. notes that the case questioned. Griswold sued Hepburn in the Louisville Chancery Court on the note and refused Hepburn's tender of U.S. notes to satisfy his claim. Since then, she then tendered the notes into the Chancery Court, which declared her debt satisfied. But it went up to the Court of Heirs of Kentucky, who reversed the Chancery Court's judgment, and Hepburn then appealed to the Supreme Court, who affirmed the Court of Heirs of Kentucky's decision. Let's see. Yeah, and the U.S. note or legal tender note was not that old at this point. This case was 1870. And they were issued 1862 to 1971. So, yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if there was an overturning of this case. Okay. Yeah, it was overruled later by another court case called Knox versus Lee, in which the court held that paper money was legal tender through the Legal Tender Act and did not conflict with Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. So, yeah, in the years during and just after the Civil War, there was a lot of people who did not want to use paper money. It was a big, big thing. I think they even had political parties based on it. But yeah. Anyway, let's continue on. Uh, let's see. That was also called the legal tender cases, which actually was more than just Hepburn versus Griswold, but apparently Hepburn versus Griswold was the biggest of them. Um, so the next case we want to kind of look at here would be uh, United States v. Klein in 1871, which was an opinion by Chief Justice Salmon Chase that the court held that the principle of separation of powers prohibits Congress from prescribing a rule of decision for the federal courts to follow in particular pending cases. So almost like, Congress can't stick its fingers into certain court cases, especially on the federal level. But yeah. And the last one of importance we're going to look at here is from 1873, the Slaughterhouse Cases. It was a 5-4 decision written by Justice Miller, and the court held that the 14th Amendment does not affect a state's police power. The decision would eventually be largely overruled by numerous Supreme Court decisions that incorporated the Bill of Rights to apply to state governments. Uh, bu- 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 so yeah, the Privilege or Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment um, only protected the legal rights that were associated with the U.S. Constitution, not those provided by the states, is what was being proclaimed. So the states still had the right to proclaim certain things. Yeah. Um, but these were the major cases of the Chase Court that really had an effect on things. I will go ahead and stick the resources in the description below the video. But as always, Educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.